My greedy sister married my husband, hoping to take over his $400 million fortune. But just a few days later, he passed away unexpectedly. After the funeral, she confidently declared herself the heir to his wealth. However, when the lawyer read his will, what we discovered shocked everyone. My sister was left speechless by what he had written. I had always been the quiet one, the shadow to my twin sister, Claire's brilliance. While Claire lit up every room she walked into with her boundless confidence and effortless charm, I was the one standing on the sidelines, blending into the background. She was everything I wasn't: outgoing, athletic and radiant in every way that seemed to matter. Our parents adore her for it too. They didn't even try to hide their favoritism. Claire was the one they bragged about to friends and relatives, the one they saw as their golden child. Whenever I came up in conversation, it was more of an afterthought. My health issues during childhood didn't help matters either. While Claire was busy excelling in sports and making friends easily, I spent most of my time in and out of doctors' offices, battling one illness after another. That seemed to seal my fate in their eyes. I was the blesser twin, the one who couldn't keep up. "Emily, why can't you just try to be more like Claire?" Mom used to say, her voice sharp with frustration. "You'd have an easier time if you did." I heard it so often that it stopped stinging after a while. By the time I was 18, I'd accepted my role in the family. I was the quiet one, the overlooked twin who would never measure up. But when college came around, I saw a glimmer of hope, a chance to step out of Claire's shadow and make something of myself. I moved away and worked hard to create a life that felt like my own. Eventually, I settled in Dallas, Texas, where I found a job as a school teacher. Teaching gave me a sense of purpose I'd never felt before. The kids in my classroom didn't care about the comparisons I'd grown up with. To them, I was just Miss Emily, someone who made them laugh and taught them new things. For the first time in my life, I started to feel like I mattered. Then Michael came along and everything changed. Michael was a real estate agent I met through mutual friends. He wasn't the kind of man who needed to fill the room with his presence. Instead, he had this quiet warmth that drew people in without demanding attention. From the moment we met, he made me feel seen in a way no one else ever had. "You're different," he told me on our first date, his voice gentle but sure, in a good way, the kind of different that stays with you. Those words stuck with me. For someone who had spent her life feeling invisible, Michael's attention felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. We dated for 2 years before getting married. Life wasn't extravagant, but it was good. His study job and my teaching salary allowed us to buy a small but cozy home. We never had children, but we didn't mind. Our days were filled with quiet moments of contentment, weekend breakfasts at the diner down the street, late night talks about our dreams, and the kind of steady companionship that felt like home. But as the years passed, something began to shift. It was subtle at first, an unreturned smile here, a distant tone there. By the time we'd been married for 10 years, those small changes had grown into something I couldn't ignore. Michael started coming home later and later, always with the same excuse: work. He was no longer the open, caring man I'd fallen in love with. When I asked how his day was, his answers were clipped, almost robotic. "Is everything okay?" I finally asked one night as we sat across from each other at the dinner table. The question had been burning in my mind for weeks and I couldn't hold it in any longer. Michael didn't even look up from his plate. "Just busy with clients," he muttered. "You know how it is." But the truth was, I didn't know. I didn't understand why he was pulling away or how to reach him. I thought about calling Claire, but the idea made my stomach turn. Our relationship had never been close. Claire still lived in our hometown and called occasionally, mostly to brag about her glamorous life. She had a high-paying marketing job, a jet-setting lifestyle, and a string of wealthy boyfriends. Whenever we spoke, I felt like a failure in comparison. Then one evening, everything came crashing down. Michael had been unusually quiet during dinner, barely touching his food. I could feel the tension hanging in the air, thick and suffocating. Finally, he set his fork down and looked at me, his expression unreadable. "I want a divorce," he said, his voice flat and emotionless. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I stared at him, trying to process what he just said. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice trembling. "It's over," he said simply. "I've made up my mind." Before I could even begin to form a response, the doorbell rang. I sat there, frozen, as Michael stood and walked to the door. A moment later, Claire strutted into the room, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. She looked as polished and confident as ever, a triumphant smile plastered across her face. "Michael and I are getting married," she announced, her voice dripping with smug satisfaction. It felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. My mind reeled as I tried to make sense of what was happening. Claire, my own sister, was standing in my home, announcing that she was engaged to my husband. The betrayal cut deeper than anything I'd ever experienced. I looked at Michael, searching his face for some sign of regret or guilt, but there was nothing. He wouldn't even meet my eyes. Claire, on the other hand, looked downright gleeful. Her smile was the kind that made my stomach churn, equal parts victorious and cruel. In that moment, everything I thought I knew about my life, my marriage, and even my own family shattered. The two people who were supposed to love me most had conspired behind my back, and now they were standing in front of me, casually tearing my world apart. I stared at Michael and Claire, my gaze darting between the two of them, as if the sheer disbelief in my eyes could force them to take it all back. My heart pounded so loudly that it drowned out everything else, leaving only the sound of my own shallow breaths. "What? This has to be some kind of sick joke," I said, though the tremor in my voice betrayed the desperation I felt. Michael didn't respond immediately. He looked away, his jaw clenched tight as though avoiding my gaze might lessen the weight of his betrayal. Claire, on the other hand, had no such reservations. Her smile only grew wider, sharper, the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. "It's no joke, Emily," Claire said, her voice dripping with smug satisfaction. "You've always lived in my shadow. I think it's time you stayed there for good." Her words struck me harder than I'd expected. They weren't just cruel, they were calculated, designed to hurt in the deepest way possible. The room seemed to close in on me, the air thick and suffocating. My chest tightened as I struggled to process what I was hearing. "How could you?" I whispered, barely able to get the words out. Tears stung my eyes, threatening to spill over as I looked at Michael, the man who had vowed to love and protect me. "Why?" Michael's expression was cold, almost detached, as if he had already moved on in his mind. "It's better this way," he said, his tone devoid of any emotion. "Let's make this as quick and painless as possible. I've already spoken to a lawyer." The finality of his words shattered something inside me. My hands trembled as I gripped the edge of the dining table for support. There were 1,000 things I wanted to say, 1,000 questions I wanted to demand answers to, but none of them came. My voice felt trapped in my throat, choked by a mix of heartbreak and fury. Claire stood there watching me fall apart with the same triumphant smile, as if this moment was the culmination of some long-held plan. I wanted to scream, to tell her how cruel she was, but my voice betrayed me. All I could do was nod numbly, the tears spilling freely now. For the next few weeks, life became a blur. I moved through my days as if I were underwater, everything feeling distant and muffled. The divorce happened with startling speed, as though Michael couldn't get away from me fast enough. He offered me a generous financial settlement, which I accepted only because I didn't have the strength to fight. I told no one the full truth about what had happened. How could I? How could I look anyone in the eye and admit that my husband had left me for my twin sister? The humiliation was too much to bear. Friends and colleagues tried to comfort me, but their kind words only deepened the ache in my chest. Meanwhile, Claire wasted no time flaunting her new relationship. My social media feeds were flooded with pictures of her and Michael, romantic dinners at five-star restaurants, weekends at luxury resorts, even candid shots where they looked impossibly happy. Each photo felt like a slap to the face, a reminder of how easily I had been replaced. Eventually, I forced myself to stop looking. I deleted my social media accounts and avoided any place where I might run into someone who knew us. The pain was still raw, a deep, unrelenting ache that no amount of distance seemed to dull. One night, as I sat alone in the quiet of my modest apartment, I found myself staring at an old photograph. It was taken when Claire and I were kids, no older than Nate. In the picture, we were hugging each other tightly, our identical smiles lighting up the frame. It was the kind of bond only twins could share, or so I had thought. The image blurred as tears filled my eyes. I clutched the photo to my chest, sobbing quietly into the empty room. Whatever connection we'd once had was gone now, destroyed by Claire's betrayal and Michael's. I couldn't imagine ever forgiving them for what they had done. But beneath the grief, a tiny ember of resolve began to flicker. I didn't know where it had come from or how long it had been there, but it was enough to remind me that I wasn't completely broken. Claire and Michael had taken so much from me already: my marriage, my sense of self, my peace of mind. I couldn't let them take anything more. Somehow I would rebuild my life. I didn't know how yet, but I would. The days dragged on, each one emptier than the last. The financial settlement allowed me to keep my apartment and maintain some stability, but it felt tainted, like a cruel consolation prize for the betrayal I had endured. Nights were the hardest. Sleep eluded me, and when it came, it brought dreams that only deepened the ache in my chest. Memories of Michael's laughter and Claire's betrayal haunted me, replaying over and over until I thought I might lose my mind. One afternoon, I returned from the grocery store with heavy bags in hand. As I approached my building, I noticed a sleek black car parked outside. My heart sank when I saw Claire stepping out, dressed in a tailored designer outfit and heels that clicked confidently against the pavement. Her hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless. I wanted to turn around to avoid her altogether, but it was too late. She had already seen me. "Emily," Claire called out, her voice unnervingly bright and cheerful, as though she had done nothing wrong. "How have you been?" My hands tightened around the shopping bags as I fought the urge to lash out. "What do you want, Claire?" I asked, my voice as steady as I could manage. She walked toward me with that same self-satisfied smile, stopping just a few feet away. "I just wanted to check on you," she said, her tone saccharine. "You've been so quiet." I was worried. The nerve of her, standing there pretending to care, made my blood boil. I bit the inside of my cheek to keep from saying something I might regret. Instead, I leveled her with a look, one that I hoped conveyed all the anger and hurt I was holding inside. "Save your concern," I said, my voice cold. "You've already done enough." For a moment, Claire's smile faltered, but it was fleeting. She quickly regained her composure, tilting her head as if she were amused. "Well, if you ever want to talk, you know where to find me," she said lightly before turning on her heel and walking back to her car. I stood there, watching her drive away, my hands trembling with a mix of anger and frustration. She had already taken so much from me, and now she had the audacity to act like she cared. But I wouldn't let her win, not anymore. I let out a bitter laugh, one that I didn't even recognize as my own. "Worried about me? That's rich, Claire, truly." Claire tilted her head slightly, her expression carefully arranged to look concerned, but I could see through it. She was feigning innocence as always. "Come on, Em," she said, her voice syrupy sweet. "I know this was hard for you, but you'll bounce back. You always do. Besides, Michael and Aya were happy. Isn't that what matters?" Her words felt like daggers, each one cutting a little deeper than the last. My chest tightened, and I could feel anger bubbling up, mingling with the grief I hadn't fully been able to process yet. What matters, Claire, I said, my voice trembling, is that you betrayed me. You took my husband, and now you have the audacity to stand here and act like you care about me. For a brief moment, Claire's smile wavered. It was only a flicker, barely noticeable, but it was enough to let me know I'd struck a nerve. She recovered quickly, her tone turning dismissive. You're being so dramatic, Emily. Michael and I were meant to be together. He chose me, not you. You need to accept that. Her words hit me harder than I expected, but they also ignited something inside me, something sharp and defiant. Get out, Claire, I said, my voice firmed, despite the tears burning at the back of my eyes. Leave me alone. I don't want to see you. For the first time, her mask slipped entirely. Her eyes turned cold, and her voice dropped its false sweetness, replaced by something hard and cutting. Fine, she said, but don't expect me to feel sorry for you. You've always been weak, Emily. That's why people leave you. I stood frozen as she walked away, her heels clicking on the pavement with a kind of finality that made my stomach churn. Her parting words echoed in my mind, over and over. Weak. That's how she saw me. How everyone had always seen me. Maybe they were right, or maybe it was time to prove them all wrong. Over the following weeks, I slowly began to piece myself back together. At first, the steps were small, almost imperceptible. I threw myself into my teaching, finding solace in the laughter and curiosity of my students. Their bright smiles reminded me that there was still good in the world, even if my own felt so far away. I joined a local book club, something I never had the confidence to do before. At first, I felt out of place, sitting quietly in the corner while others debated plot twists and character development. But little by little, I started to participate. I made a few new friends, people who didn't know anything about my past or the shadow of Claire. It felt liberating to just be Emily without the weight of comparisons dragging me down. I also started therapy, a step I had resisted for far too long. Talking about the pain was excruciating at first, but my therapist helped me unpack the layers of hurt I had carried for years. Hurt that went far deeper than just Michael and Claire. Each session felt like peeling back a bandage, exposing wounds I hadn't even realized were there. But slowly those wounds began to heal. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't quick, but day by day, I felt a tiny flicker of strength returning. The Emily who had once been content to fade into the background was starting to stand a little taller. I didn't know exactly where I was headed, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was moving forward. Then 3 months after the divorce, everything changed again. It was an ordinary afternoon, and I was sipping tea in my living room when the phone rang. I didn't recognize the number but answered anyway, figuring it might be something related to work. Miss Carter's, the voice on the other end was professional, almost hesitant. Yes, this is Emily, I replied, my brow furrowing. I'm calling about your ex-husband, Michael. The man continued. I regret to inform you that he passed away suddenly last night. The words didn't register at first. What? I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. How? How did it happen? A heart condition, he explained gently. It was very sudden. I'm so sorry for your loss. He left instructions for me to contact you. There's a will, as well as a letter he wanted you to have. My mind swirled with questions, too many to make sense of. Michael was gone? How could that be? And why would he leave something for me after everything that had happened? I see, I said finally, my voice shaking. When can I come in to discuss this? We arranged a meeting for the next day. After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence, the phone still clutched in my hand. I didn't know how to feel grief, confusion, anger. It was all tangled together in a knot that I couldn't unravel. What could Michael possibly have to say to me after everything he had done? The next morning, I sat in the lawyer's office, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. The room was quiet except for the sound of papers shuffling as the lawyer prepared to go over the details of Michael's will. My heart raced, anticipation and dread churning in my stomach. Here it is, the lawyer finally said, sliding a plain white envelope across the desk. Michael's final letter to you. Please take your time. I stared at the envelope for a long moment, my hands trembling as I reached for it. The weight of it felt heavier than it should have. Slowly I tore it open and unfolded the piece of paper inside. The sight of Michael's familiar handwriting made my chest tighten. Dear Emily, the letter began. By the time you read this, I'll be gone. There's so much I want to say, but I'll start with the most important thing. I'm sorry. I know what I've done seems unforgivable, but I need you to know that everything I did was to protect you. I stopped reading for a moment. My breath caught in my throat. Protect me? What on earth could he mean? My hands shook as I continued to read, desperate for answers. 6 months ago, I was diagnosed with a terminal heart condition. The doctors gave me little time, and I knew I couldn't leave you vulnerable to the people around you, especially Claire. She's always been manipulative, and I feared what she might do to you after I was gone. When my uncle passed away, I learned about his estate. At first I thought it would be a blessing, but it turned out to be a curse. The estate was mired in debt, over $2 million. Claire didn't know that, of course. She only saw the opportunity for wealth and took the bait. I let her believe the inheritance was a fortune, knowing she'd act on her greed. I know it hurt you when I left, but I needed Claire to focus on me, not you. It was the only way to keep her from dragging you into her mess. I've left you my personal savings, Emily. It's not much, but it should be enough to help you start over. You deserve a life free from Claire's toxicity and the weight of our family's dysfunction. Please know that I've always cared for you, even in the end. Be strong, Emily. You're so much stronger than you think. With love, Michael. As I finished reading Michael's letter, my hands trembled, the paper crinkling slightly in my grasp. Tears blurred my vision and streamed down my cheeks, each one carrying the weight of 1,000 emotions. I felt sorrow for the man who had kept this enormous burden to himself, anger for the pain his actions had caused me, and a bittersweet gratitude for the love he had tried to show, even in his flawed way. I clutched the letter tightly to my chest, my mind spinning. Michael had betrayed me. There was no denying that. But now I saw the truth. The choices he made, however misguided, had been an attempt to protect me. He had sacrificed himself, enduring Claire's manipulative games and distancing himself from me, all to shield me from her grasp. It was a truth that left me reeling. How was I supposed to process this? How could I reconcile the man who had broken my heart with the one who had tried to save it? The days following Michael's funeral passed in a haze. I attended out of respect, though it felt surreal to be there. Claire, of course, put on a grand show of mourning, her tears perfectly timed and her appearance meticulously polished. I kept my distance, unable to bear the sight of her pretending to be the grieving fiancé while I carried the weight of Michael's confession. She had no idea the fortune she thought she'd inherited was nothing more than a mountain of debt, and for the first time in years I felt a small sense of justice. Still, Michael's revelation weighed heavily on me. For most of my life I had believed what everyone else seemed to think, that I was weak, the lesser twin who couldn't stand on her own. But his letter told a different story. He saw strength in me, even when I couldn't see it in myself. It was a realization that both humbled and unsettled me. In the days that followed, I found myself reflecting on my life, on all the ways I had allowed others to define me. My parents' constant comparisons to Claire, her endless need to outshine me, and Michael's betrayal, all of it had shaped how I saw myself. I had spent so long believing I wasn't enough, letting their actions dictate my worth. But Michael's words planted a seed of something I hadn't felt in years: determination. One evening, as I sat in my small apartment surrounded by the remnants of my old life, I opened the envelope the lawyer had given me containing the details of Michael's financial arrangements. True to his word, he had left me his personal savings. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough. A small but meaningful gift that could help me start anew. For the first time, I didn't feel burdened by the money. I saw it as a chance, a way to rebuild. I decided to make changes, starting with my surroundings. The apartment, though comforting in its familiarity, felt tied to the pain of the past. I began searching for a new place, somewhere that could serve as a fresh start. It was scary, the thought of leaving behind the life I had known, but it also felt necessary. I needed to let go of the pieces that no longer served me and create something entirely my own. I threw myself into my work with renewed energy, pouring my heart into my students and finding joy in their progress. Teaching had always been my sanctuary, and now it felt like my lifeline. I also continued therapy, where I explored the layers of hurt and resilience within me. Slowly I began to uncover parts of myself I had buried long ago, the parts that were strong, capable, and worthy. Claire, predictably, tried to reach out. She called several times, leaving voicemail after voicemail, each one more frantic than the last. I ignored them all. I knew it was only a matter of time before she discovered the truth about Michael's inheritance, and I wasn't interested in being her safety net. She had taken enough from me already. One afternoon I received an email from Claire. It was short and to the point. "We need to talk. Call me." I stared at the screen for a long time before deleting the message without replying. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel the need to engage with her, to justify myself, or seek her approval. It was liberating. As weeks turned into months, I found myself changing in ways I hadn't expected. I started taking risks, small ones at first, trying a new hobby, saying yes to invitations I would have declined before. I began to trust myself, to believe that I could navigate life on my own terms. It wasn't easy and there were still moments of doubt, but with each step I felt a little stronger. Michael's letter stayed with me, tucked away in a drawer, but never far from my thoughts. It was a reminder of the complexity of love and sacrifice, of the ways people can both hurt and heal us. And while I still wrestled with the pain of his betrayal, I also felt a deep gratitude for the chance he had given me to reclaim my life. For the first time in years, I began to feel something I thought I had lost forever: hope.